Hello, and welcome to another live chapter reading of Fate, Frankincense, and Funerals by Naomi Valkyrie, as presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Fate Opens the Way. The mid-morning sun shines brightly down on me as I trudge to the temple to meet with Azrael, the high priest and sovereign, our equivalent of an alpha. I wish I could say that the cheeriness of the sun on this late summer day lifts my spirits, but I've been restless of late, and nothing seems to shake me out of it. A week of time off hasn't helped my mood either. Climbing the steps in front of the building, I wonder what Azrael couldn't tell me over the phone. Whatever it is, it must be serious, because we've never had any issues with communicating. He's what I imagine a father would be like, if I'd ever been able to have one. Vulture shifters like me, and jackal shifters like Azrael, are forbidden to take a mate. My mother either never knew who my father was, or she elected not to tell me. Walking through the open door, I head towards Azrael's office at the back of the building. The scent of frankincense hangs heavy in the air, telling me we'll be building a funeral pyre soon. Archeron, come in, son. Close the door behind you, Azrael says when he sees me. After the door shuts, I take a seat in the chair across from him, where he sits at his desk. The room is silent for a few moments while Azrael studies me. Fighting the urge to shift in my seat, I wonder if I've done something wrong. I can't think of anything, but the intensity of his stare is uncomfortable. I've noticed how unsettled you've been lately, which is why I gave you the time off, he finally says. I open my mouth to speak, but he holds up a hand to stop me. I'm not saying anything is wrong. It's merely an observation. We all go through times where we're disenchanted with life. I give a nod, relief flooding through me. I always hate to disappoint him. That being said, I've had an unusual request that I think will give you a change of pace that might snap you out of this funk you're in. Intrigued, I lean forward in the chair. I won't lie, Archeron. This has the potential to be dangerous. Well, don't keep me in suspense, Azrael. What's the request? A live-in nurse called today. His patient is dying and wants to go through the transition at home, not here in Chiron, as is tradition. If we agree to this, someone will have to go stay with the patient in Mandara, where the home is located, until the transition is complete. The body will have to be prepared there before transport. I can see why Azrael wanted to talk about this in person. Vulture and jackal shifters aren't allowed to be in Mandara, or any of the other shifter cities. We're considered unclean because we touch the dead. Vultures and jackals are confined to the land we were given to build our makeshift town of Chiron and the 100 miles to any side of it that keeps a buffer between us and the other cities. I'll do it, I say, feeling a strong conviction to go. Something is pulling me to the city. Despite the danger, I know I need to do this. And besides, this might be my only chance to see anything outside of Chiron. I figured you would. Plus, I trust you to keep a low profile, he says while writing something on a sticky note, then handing it to me. This is the address of the patient and the phone number of the nurse. He's expecting you tomorrow evening. Taking the note from Azrael, I stand up. I will perform my duties with honor and bring the soul back for the sacred rites. Thank you for this opportunity. I know you're going to do well. Now give this old man a hug before you go off to your adventure. He rises and we stand in an embrace for a few moments before he dismisses me so I can start packing. Twilight descends as I load up my suitcase into one of the beat-up old trucks we share as a community. Taking one last look around at my home, the rows of identical tiny houses that barely fit one person in them, I wonder what it will be like in Mandara. I've heard that the city has huge buildings and multiple people can live in one house, but it's hard to imagine. When my mother was still alive, we'd managed to fit 2 people in a house, but it wasn't comfortable, and I usually slept on a mat on the floor. Here you go, my best friend, a minion says, handing me a large decorative wooden box. Instead of tossing it in the bed with my suitcase, I gently place it on the passenger floorboard in the cab. Once I'm satisfied that it won't get damaged, I close the door and walk around to the driver's side, a minion following. "So, Mandara," a minion says, cramming his hands into the pockets of his second-hand jeans. "I'll be fine. Most of the time I'll be indoors, tending to my duties. If, for some unknown reason, I have to go out, I'll cover my head. Don't worry." He doesn't look convinced, but he doesn't say nothing else, just gives me a nod and squeezes my shoulder. "See you soon," I say, opening the door and getting in. The sound of the door closing seems final, like I'm sealing my fate with this decision. One last wave, I crank the truck and press down on the gas, leaving Chiron behind me. Chapter 2. No going back. It's dark by the time I get to Mandara, which works in my favor. I'm less likely to be noticed as I pull into the driveway of an enormous house. Well, it's enormous to me. I don't really know how it compares to the rest of the houses in the city. Before I can pull out my phone to call and let the nurse know I've arrived, the garage door opens and a man motions me to drive forward into an empty space besides 2 other cars. Once I'm safely inside and have the truck turned off, the man pushes a button on the wall, causing the door to close, separating us from any prying eyes. A sudden case of nerves hits me, and my hands shake as I try to pull the keys out of the ignition. What if this guy despises me, and I have to endure hateful behavior the entire time I'm here? It's too late to do anything about it now, I guess. Taking a deep breath, then blowing it out, I wipe my sweating hands down my pant legs so the keys don't slip out of my grip. Then open the door and get out. Walking to the back of the truck, I pull my suitcase out of the bed, intending to come back out for the box on the floorboard later. I'm already out of place here. Bringing the box in will only draw more attention to that fact. As if he read my mind, the man says, "It's okay to bring your casket inside." Surprised that he knows the proper name for my funerary supply container, I raise my head up to get my first good look at him. When my eyes focus on the man in front of me, I nearly drop my suitcase. He's beautiful in a way I've never seen in Chiron. His hair is so light, I could swear it's almost white. Short on the sides, but a massive curls on the top. The finer features of his face make him look a little on the delicate side, but his lean muscle mass tells me he's likely stronger than most people give him credit for. But what really strikes me are his warm brown eyes, staring at me through thin framed glasses. Where I would have expected eyes full of wariness or even hatred, I see nothing but kindness and respect. I feel a magnetic pull toward him I have never felt from any other person. It feels like what I've heard the pull of a mate bond feels like. Surely that can't be right. We're not supposed to be able to take a mate. Why would fate be that cruel? "Let me take that for you," he says, reaching out for my suitcase. "I'm Irapple, by the way." "Archeron," I reply with a slight bow of my head. I hand him the suitcase, being careful not to touch him, then turn to walk around the truck so I'm not tempted to stare. Opening the passenger door, I lean in and pick up the casket, keeping a firm grasp on it. As I shut the door, I catch my reflection in the window. Long black hair on one side of my head, the other side shaved and decorated with line art tattoo of a vulture, the required hairstyle for all vulture shifters. There is no mistaking what I am, and I need to remember that, despite how the kindness in Arapple's eyes attempts to disarm me. Turning away from the truck, I follow Arapple inside and try not to gawk as he gives me a tour of the house. You could fit at least 4 of my living space at home, if not more, inside this one. Once I've learned where the important things are, Arapple leaves me in the room I'll be using while I'm here, promising to introduce me to his patient, Carissa, in the morning. Chapter 3. The First Step. After a restless night of being awakened by every little sound, wondering if Arapple wasn't as genuine as he seemed and was coming in to kill me in my sleep, I've finally given up trying to rest. Sunlight shining in around the curtains illuminates the room enough for me to not have to turn on any lights. Throwing back the fluffy blankets, I make my way to the ensuite to take a shower. The consistent water pressure amazes me, along with the long-lasting warmth. At home, we're lucky if we get a decent shower 3 times a week. I wish I could stay under the warm spray longer, but I know that I shouldn't waste water. I don't want to do anything that could put me on the outs with my host. After turning off the water, I reach for the towel I'd hung up on the rack closet closest to the shower. The softness of the material makes me think of a cloud. For a moment, I feel guilty that I'm here in luxury while the others are back in Chiron, barely getting by with second-hand goods. Once the towel is back on the rack, I face the mirror and run a brush through the hair on one side of my head, then get my toothbrush and brush my teeth. When I'm satisfied that I'm as presentable as I can be, I step back into the bedroom and kneel, facing west with my hands bowed. Guardians of the underworld, hear me, and prepare the way for a new soul. Spirits of the underworld, hear me, and prepare to embrace a new sister. I've never actually been sure if there are gods and goddesses, but I've always felt reverence and respect for our practices. Today's prayer is short, as this is the beginning of my vigil. Subsequent prayers will become longer as I relay the stories of my charge to the underworld to prepare for her arrival. As I'm rising from my prayer and meditation, I hear a throat clear behind me. I'm so sorry. I knocked, but I didn't get an answer, so I wanted to make sure you were settling in okay, Arapple stammers, his cheeks turning a deep shade of pink that stands out in his fair skin. It takes me a minute to figure out why he's acting so strangely. I'm used to living alone, or only having a minion around, that I've neglected to dress immediately after my shower. Completely ignoring the awkwardness, because why embarrass him further, I reach into my suitcase and pull out some clothes, then proceed to dress while responding to him. Thank you for checking on me. I'll be ready to start the day as soon as I'm finished here. I'll leave you to it then. We can meet in the kitchen when you're ready. I acknowledge I've heard him with a quick nod and resume dressing as he closes the door. Looking down at my arms and hands, the tan skin so different from Arapple's, I wonder what he thinks of me. Before I can let myself fall down that rabbit hole of dangerous curiosity, I remind myself that it doesn't matter what he thinks. Nothing can come of it. It's best to stay focused on the reason I'm here. After slipping into my beat-up tennis shoes, I take a leather-bound notebook and pen out of the casket and head towards the kitchen. Chapter 4. Fate's Emissary. Arapple hands me a tray with a plate full of some kind of egg dish on it I've never seen before. Our food in Chiron is simple, and while I've had eggs fried or scrambled, I've never had something that looks like this. Not wanting to seem ignorant, I keep myself from asking what it is. In case I don't remember to tell you later, I'm grateful for you taking the risk to come here. I'm also grateful that Sovereign Azrael sent someone with so much experience to attend Carissa, Arapple says, while fixing 2 more plates of food and setting them on another tray. I wonder if Azrael discussed my experience with Arapple, but then I remember that he saw my back earlier during our awkward encounter after my shower. A vulture shifter gets a tattoo for every year of actively attending the dying. I have 10 stars in my back, marking my years. You're welcome. It was an honor to be chosen, and to be perfectly honest, I needed to come here. I know it might sound odd, but it was almost like a compulsion. I've been restless lately, and I feel like maybe it's a sign that you called right when I needed a change. For a moment, it looks like he wants to say something, but then he settles for a humming sound in response as he lifts the tray that he's put the plates on and motions with his head for me to follow him down the hallway. Come in, a voice calls out after Arapple knocks on a closed door. Good morning, Carissa, he says cheerfully, taking the tray he's carrying and setting it on a bedside table. I'd like you to meet Artron, your attendant. Come in, she says, motioning for me to step further into the space. Let me get a good look at you. Now, Carissa, Arapple says with a warning in his voice. Oh, don't mind him. He thinks I don't know how lonely he is, so he gets onto me for trying to find him a mate. Carissa! Arapple exclaims as his ears and cheeks turning pink. I'm so sorry, Archeron. She knows better than to say things like that, I swear. Hush, you. You know I meddle because I care. Breakfast is served, he says loudly, likely to change the focus of the conversation. Once we're settled, Carissa asks me many questions about Chiron and what it's like there. If I couldn't smell death on her, I'd have no idea she wasn't well. She seems so vibrant and full of spirit. Shifters are long-lived, but even when we die of old age, eventually. Every once in a while, some of us contract a rare disease or run afoul with various poisons, depending on the type of shifter. After we've eaten, Arapple takes the plates back to the kitchen, and I begin my duty. Opening the leather-bound notebook, I pen Carissa's full name and birth date on the title page, then say, Okay, Carissa, tell me about your life. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this live chapter reading of Fate, Frankincense, and Funerals by Naomi Valkyrie. Have a good night.